Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're going to take a snapshot of the world on a single day, April 10th, 2026. It's a day where you've got high-stakes diplomacy, simmering global tensions, and some major economic shocks. And what we're going to see is how they're all weaving together into one single story. Okay, let's just dive right in. On the surface, you've got peace talks happening in one part of the world, and then you've got rising prices right here at home. So the big question for today is this: how is a super fragile peace process in the Middle East directly connected to a global energy shock that's, well, hitting your wallet? Let's break it down. So our first stop has to be the epicenter of this whole thing, that ongoing conflict involving Iran, the incredibly fragile truce that's barely holding things together, and the fight for control over one of the most critical waterways on the entire planet. All right, just to get everyone up to speed, this conflict really kicked off nearly 6 weeks ago. A truce, and I mean a fragile one, was called just 2 weeks back. And that brings us to today, where these high-stakes peace talks are pretty much the only thing standing between a shaky peace and a full-blown regional war. And this slide, this really captures the diplomatic tightrope everyone's walking. On one hand, you've got the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance, in Islamabad, deep in these intense negotiations trying to hammer out a permanent peace. But at the exact same time, President Trump is out there publicly accusing Iran of violating that very truce by choking off oil flow. It's this two-pronged strategy, right? Quiet negotiation on one side and very loud public pressure on the other. And while all those diplomats are talking, the cost of the last 6 weeks is just staggering. It really comes down to this one stark number: 18,000. That's how many bombs the Israeli Defense Forces have dropped since this conflict started. It's a number that just shows you the sheer intensity of the fighting and what is truly at stake if these peace talks fail. And this really shows you the complexity of the region, because even as they're trying to put out one fire, another diplomatic channel is opening up. Israel just announced it's going to pursue peace talks with its northern neighbor, Lebanon. Now, of course, Lebanon is saying that can only happen with a full ceasefire, but it's another huge piece moving on this global chessboard. Okay, now let's follow the thread, because this conflict isn't just happening over there. We're going to look at the economic fallout and how events in the Middle East are having a very real impact on your bank account. So the whole thing hinges on this waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. You have to understand, it's one of the most vital shipping routes for oil in the world. And right now, its near total closure is the direct cause of this global energy crisis. It's gotten so serious that President Trump is actually asking NATO for help to get it reopened. It's really that simple. When this critical choke point in the Persian Gulf gets squeezed, you feel a pinch in your wallet. You see it at the gas pump, you see it at the grocery store. It's a direct line. And here's the proof. You can see the impact right here. New data is showing that U.S. inflation just saw its biggest spike since that peak back in 2024. And economists are drawing a straight line from the fighting in the Middle East and the closure of Hormuz to these rising prices right here at home. But the world doesn't just stop for one crisis. So let's widen the lens for a second to see the other flashpoints lighting up the geopolitical map. You start to get a picture of a world that's really on high alert, where every single event just adds to the pressure. Over in Europe, all eyes are on Hungary. There's a huge election going on that could actually unseat the long-serving Prime Minister Viktor Orban. And if that happens, it could cause a massive political shift across the entire continent, maybe even changing the NATO alliance dynamics that are in play in the Gulf crisis. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, we're seeing a brief moment of quiet. Both Russia and Ukraine have separately announced a 32-hour ceasefire for Orthodox Easter. It's a rare pause in a conflict that, as we know, continues to demand global attention and resources. And then in Stockholm, the U.S. Embassy has to issue a security alert for a massive pro-U.S. states demonstration. We're talking 10,000 people expected. It's just another reminder of how the American presence is felt and monitored all over the globe. And look, the threats aren't just physical anymore. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is now warning of, quote, a new cyber risk. What's he talking about? An unreleased AI model from a company called Anthropic. It's named Mythos, and apparently it's so powerful, the company is actually holding it back over security concerns. It's a whole new kind of flashpoint, not one you can find on a map, but one that exists entirely in cyberspace. Okay, so let's bring it all back home now and look at how all these global pressures are clashing with the ambitions and anxieties right here in the United States. On the one hand, you have this message of supreme national confidence. Designs have just been unveiled for President Trump's proposed 250-foot triumphal arch in Washington, D.C., a massive, monumental project meant to be a symbol of American victory. But that ambition is happening against a backdrop of some very real, very complex problems at home. Reports are describing immigration enforcement as entering a quieter, but also more destabilizing phase. The military is struggling to rebuild missile defenses because of supply chain problems. And get this, critical minerals needed for defense, like gallium, are mostly controlled by China, which creates a huge vulnerability. But with all this tension in the air, it is so important to look beyond just the headlines. Because on this very same day, we also get these really powerful glimpses of global connection. Take sports, for instance. Ticket access for the FIFA World Cup 26 just went live for fans all over the world. At the exact same time, the Professional Fighters League announced its first ever event in West Africa, which is going to be in Lagos, Nigeria. These are just huge moments of shared passion that go way beyond borders and politics. So I guess it leaves us with this question. On a day like April 10th, 2026, in a world full of these deeply connected crises, what's the real headline? Is it the conflicts that are trying to divide us? Or is it these shared human moments of connection that somehow manage to endure, despite it all?